My name is Captain Amy Lawson, 27 years old, United States Army Special Forces. I've neutralized ambushes on foreign soil, but nothing prepared me for the one that unfolded at my own wedding. When my mother-in-law's hand hovered over my champagne flute, I caught the drop and made a silent switch she'd never forget. What would you do if you saw that in real life? Drop your thoughts below and hit subscribe for more true discipline under fire. I've spent years in the Army, learning how to read a room before stepping into it, how to identify exits, choke points, threats, and allies in a single sweep of the eyes. But nothing in my training prepared me for the kind of battlefield I walked into on my wedding night. The reception hall at the Columbus Athletic Club shimmered with gold light. Strings warmed up near the stage, their notes echoing softly off marble columns. Waiters moved in crisp lines, refilling glasses, carrying plates of salmon and steak. Guests laughed, easy, relaxed laughter. And somewhere in that sound, I could already hear the false tone, the edge of pretense that came from people who showed up more for reputation than love. At the center of it all was Diane Davis, my new mother-in-law. Polished, elegant, commanding in a way that only someone born into social comfort could be. I had seen officers like her before, not in uniform, but in posture. Every gesture meant to remind others that she ran the field. To most, she was charming. To me, she was a textbook study in controlled hostility. Ethan, my husband, was radiant. He'd earned the rare look of a man who believed in happy endings. He'd waited for this day, wanted peace between the two women he loved most. He thought tonight would heal the cold distance between us. That belief, his faith in her, was the only reason I'd chosen silence over confrontation for so long. Beside me stood my maid of honor, Sergeant Sarah Miller. In another life, we'd shared rations in the dirt, counting hours under blackout canvas. Tonight, she was out of uniform, but not off duty. She caught my glance across the table, one subtle nod, the same signal we'd used on Overwatch shifts, eyes open, stay ready. The music softened. Diane approached. Her smile was precise, every inch of it measured. "Relax, Amy," she murmured, low enough for only me to hear. "You don't have to be in command tonight." It was said sweetly, but I caught the sting beneath it. A small chuckle rippled around the nearby table. They thought she was joking. I didn't. I'd seen this tactic before. Minor humiliations launched in public, so retaliation looked unseemly. In the service, we call it provocation by decorum. She wanted a reaction, something emotional, something to confirm the story she'd been building, that I was the rigid soldier trying to control her son's life. I kept my breathing steady. Shoulders squared, chin relaxed, posture neutral, not defensive. I raised my glass slightly and smiled. "Thank you, ma'am. I'll try." Sarah's eyes flicked toward me again, reading posture, not words. She knew. She'd seen this game too. The kind of psychological skirmish you fight with tone and timing instead of weapons. Over the past year, Diane had launched several of these small strikes. A forgotten RSVP for my family at the engagement dinner. A misplaced catering deposit that somehow got redirected. Nothing provable, nothing worth a public fight. But enough to test boundaries, enough to signal where I stood in her command structure. Outside it. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd survived ambushes in Kandahar, briefed generals who didn't think a woman belonged in a special forces unit, and led joint patrols where one wrong word could cost lives. Yet here, surrounded by candlelight and champagne, I was being tested in a different theater. One of whispers, smiles, and poisoned compliments. From the outside, we looked perfect. But beneath the lace and linen, another kind of mission was unfolding. One I hadn't chosen, but one I was fully capable of finishing. And that's the thing about operations like this. You never know when the first shot's been fired until you feel the heat of it. Tonight, I was about to find out. The clinking of glassware was a familiar rhythm now. Ambient, harmless, until it wasn't. From the corner of my vision, I caught movement. Diane leaned forward across the white draped table. one manicured hand hovering just a fraction too long above my champagne flute. It wasn't clumsy or careless. It was surgical. Her fingers twitched once, and a small white object slipped between them, vanishing into the golden fizz. The tablet broke the surface tension like a sniper round entering water. Silent, invisible, but final. In the Army, we're trained to recognize the instant a moment shifts from peace to threat. Most people remember the sound of danger. The shout, the alarm, the blast. Soldiers remember the pause before it. That perfect, unnatural stillness when the air itself seems to tighten. That was this moment. The music around me didn't stop. The crowd didn't gasp. But inside my chest, a switch flipped. Threat identified. Unknown chemical agent. Estimated dose, single tablet. Delivery, covert. Intent, incapacitation, humiliation, or harm. Environmental conditions, 150 civilians. 0 situational awareness. No allies briefed. Rules of engagement, non-lethal setting. Collateral sensitivity high. Response window, seconds. I didn't panic. I didn't even blink. My breathing slowed, not from fear, but from discipline. Panic clouds judgment, control clears it. My training kicked in like muscle memory, that ingrained reflex of observation, analysis, decision, action. Diane's hand retracted smoothly. She didn't look at me. Not directly. But there was a micro-expression, the faintest upturn at the corner of her mouth. A satisfaction she couldn't quite conceal. She believed she'd already won. Across the table, Ethan laughed at a joke I didn't hear. He lifted his own flute, oblivious. My heart ached at his innocence, the kind of goodness that doesn't survive long under fire. The options assembled in my mind with military precision. Option A, knock over the glass, feign clumsiness. Outcome, public spectacle. She reclaims narrative as overreactive bride. Collateral, reputation, credibility. Option B, confront her directly. Outcome, chaos. She denies, cries, manipulates. No proof. My word versus hers. Civilian witnesses untrained, easily swayed by emotion. Option C, controlled reversal. Swap flutes, maintain composure, gather evidence post-incident. Outcome, risk calculated. Requires flawless timing and subtlety. Preserves truth, ensures verifiable chain. Emotion wanted A. Justice wanted B. Training demanded C. The MC's voice echoed over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention for a toast? Every head turned toward the microphone. Every pair of eyes left the table. That was my window. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. With one hand, I adjusted the bouquet resting near my plate. A cover gesture. Natural. Unremarkable. My left arm crossed my body, steadying as I leaned forward. The bouquet blocked the line of sight from 3 directions. My right hand moved beneath its shadow. Precise. Deliberate. 2 flutes. 1 motion. A pivot. A silent exchange. No splash. No rattle. Less than half a second. When I straightened, my face betrayed nothing. The champagne before me now belonged to her. Hers to me. She turned back, ready to play her next move. Her smile landed on me, practiced and perfect. To family, she said, lifting her glass. To us, I replied. Voice calm, steady, unreadable. For the first time that evening, her eyes flickered with something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. The quartet struck a chord. The lights dimmed slightly. Conversations softened to whispers. I raised the glass, letting the bubbles rise against the crystal. I didn't drink. Neither did she. Not yet. She wanted the timing, the attention, the dramatic flourish of a mother welcoming her new daughter. She was saving it for the toast. That suited me fine, because now I wasn't a bride. I was an operator in the field, and the ambush had just failed. I could almost hear my old instructor's voice in my ear. When the enemy hands you the first move, take it quietly. The trap had been set, but it wasn't mine anymore. The toast began the way all toasts do. Too loud, too long, too cheerful. Guests lifted their glasses high, unaware that two of them now held very different fates. I raised mine, the one that used to be hers, and let the rim touch my lips without a sip. Across the table, Diane's expression glowed with that polished confidence she'd perfected over years of social warfare. Her movements were still crisp, rehearsed, but I noticed something only a trained observer would. A tremor, barely there. The faintest vibration through the crystal as she held her glass aloft. I'd seen this before. Not in banquet halls, but in after-action footage from field missions. Muscle control fading in detainees exposed to sedatives. The body speaks long before the mouth does. I lowered my glass, placing it gently back on the white linen. The bubbles climbed and broke against the rim, tiny bursts of light in the soft glow of chandeliers. The scent of roses, vanilla frosting, and champagne merged into something faintly metallic. The air felt colder. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the hard part: patience. In training, we're told the most dangerous time in any operation isn't the breach or the firefight. It's the wait that follows the first move. The temptation to act, to confirm, to control. I kept still. Stillness wins wars. Beside me, Ethan's hand found mine. "See? I told you she'd come around," he whispered, voice warm, hopeful. I looked at him, that earnest smile, those kind eyes, and swallowed the words I wanted to say. He couldn't see the truth yet. Not until the evidence spoke for itself. 15 minutes passed. Laughter rolled through the room like waves, uneven, breaking against clusters of conversation. The violinist shifted into a livelier tune. Then it began. First, a subtle blink rate change. Slower, unfocused. Diane dabbed at her mouth with a linen napkin, missing slightly. Her eyes softened, losing that hawk-like precision that once pinned me in place. Indicator 1, fine motor impairment. She leaned toward a nearby guest, speaking too close, her words spilling over themselves. The friend smiled awkwardly, nodding at phrases that made no sense. Indicator 2, speech disorganization. Ethan chuckled politely at something across the table, still blind to the unraveling, just 3 seats away. I gave a small nod to Sarah. She caught it instantly. The kind of micro-gesture that doesn't exist outside shared deployments. Sarah shifted her chair, positioning slightly behind Diane's line of sight. Casual, unhurried. From a distance, she looked like any bridesmaid chatting with guests. In reality, she was Overwatch. Diane laughed suddenly, loud, sharp, unrestrained. Heads turned. Someone near her clapped lightly, assuming she'd told a joke. But the laughter didn't stop. It carried on. Too loud, too long. The table fell silent. Ethan glanced over, concern flickering across his face. "Mom?" he asked softly. She waved him off, eyes unfocused. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just fine." Her voice drifted, each syllable slightly detached from the next. Indicator 3, onset of CNS sedation. I kept my breathing level. My instinct was to intervene, to call medics, to take command of the scene. But this wasn't the desert, and she wasn't my casualty. This was a different kind of battlefield, one where restraint was the weapon. The real danger now wasn't her condition. It was exposure. If anyone traced the effect back to me, to the glass she'd tampered with, her story could still flip. The only way truth would stand was through procedure, not panic. I reached for my clutch under the table and discreetly tapped the side twice. Our prearranged signal from years ago. Secure evidence. Sarah rose slowly, adjusting her dress as if preparing for a photo. She picked up a clean napkin from a nearby setting and approached the head table. Her movements were graceful, deliberate, The kind of quiet efficiency that doesn't draw a single pair of eyes. She lifted Diane's now empty flute by the stem, wrapped it carefully, and stepped away without a word. No one noticed? No one ever notices competence done right. Ethan frowned, confusion overtaking his earlier optimism. She must have skipped lunch, he muttered. She can't hold her champagne. Maybe, I said softly. My tone carried no judgment, no accusation, only distance. By the time dessert was served, Diane was swaying slightly in her seat. Her laughter had turned to soft murmurs, her posture slackening under the weight of her own arrogance. People began exchanging looks. Some whispered, others pretended not to see. The truth was already working its way through her bloodstream. The evidence was already secured. And still, I didn't move. Discipline isn't just the art of control. It's the refusal to claim victory too early. In the army, premature celebration gets people killed. In life, it kills credibility. So I sat quietly, the model bride. I smiled when photographed, thanked guests when they congratulated me, and never once looked directly at Diane again. The battle wasn't over. It had just entered a quieter phase, one fought not with force, but with patience, precision, and proof. Because in my world, truth doesn't shout. It files a report. By the time the cake was cut, the reception had shifted into that restless final phase. The polite goodbyes, the clinking of coffee cups, the soft buzz of champagne-heavy laughter. But at the head table, Diane's composure was deteriorating by the minute. Her pupils had widened. Her voice, usually sharp as glass, floated with a strange softness. She reached for her water and missed. The glass tipped, spilling across the linen. The guests nearest to her gasped lightly, and Ethan jumped to blot it with a napkin. "Mom," he whispered, his voice tight with embarrassment. "You're exhausted. Maybe we should—" "I'm fine," she slurred, batting him away. The words stretched, broken in half by a giggle. "Just celebrating. My new soldier daughter." Her eyes landed on me, and for a second I saw something raw. Not recognition, not remorse. Just confusion. Then it slipped away. That was my confirmation. The dose was active. Onset matched oral absorption for a standard benzodiazepine. 15 to 40 minutes, depending on stomach contents. My earlier estimate had been correct. The data points lined up. I watched Ethan hover near her, unsure whether to guide her or argue. He looked toward me, silently asking for help. I gave none. My instinct to lead, to take control, wrestled with something colder. The knowledge that intervention without evidence ends in blame. Tonight, feelings were liabilities. Facts were my only allies. When Diane finally tried to stand, her legs betrayed her. The chair screeched backward. Her designer heels wobbled, one twisting awkwardly beneath her. Gregory, her husband, was across the room chatting with colleagues, oblivious. Guests pretended not to stare. Ethan caught her by the elbow. "Come on, Mom. Let's get you outside." She resisted weakly, murmuring about a speech she hadn't given yet. The words tangled, fell apart. He led her toward the exit, half guiding, half carrying her. I waited 30 seconds before following. Enough to keep eyes off me. Enough to ensure her glass, the real weapon of the evening, remained untouched by anyone else. Sarah was already in motion. I caught her by the dessert table, her posture casual, her expression neutral. In her left hand, she carried a linen napkin folded twice, fingers gripping the stem of the flute inside. "No prince compromised," she murmured, eyes ahead. "Handling by stem only." "Good," I whispered. "Timestamp your phone. Record chain. I'll handle next phase." Sarah nodded once. No emotion, just execution. She pulled out her phone, took a discreet photo on the white linen background with the digital clock visible. One more layer of documentation. In the military, truth doesn't rely on trust. It relies on proof. By the time I reached the foyer, Ethan and Gregory were at the curb. trying to keep Diane upright. Her head lolled slightly, hair falling out of its perfect twist. The valet hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Gregory barked, "She's had too much. Just get the car." That was one version of the story. The wrong one. But for now, it would serve. I approached, steady, composed. "I'll follow in our vehicle," I said. Ethan glanced at me, relief flashing across his features. He thought I was being supportive. He didn't know I was maintaining eyes on target. At the hospital, the harsh fluorescence replaced the golden light of the reception hall. The smell of antiseptic hit first. Sharp, clean, merciless. Nurses moved with efficiency, taking vitals, whispering in shorthand codes. They wheeled Diane into triage while Ethan paced, rubbing his temples. Gregory handled the paperwork, his voice brittle with embarrassment. When the attending physician appeared, clipboard in hand, I stepped forward. "Doctor," I said quietly, "you need to hear this." He paused, studying my face. Makeup immaculate, hair pinned, expression unreadable. I gave him the facts the way I'd give a field report. Precise, chronological, emotionless. At approximately 2100 hours, I began. I observed my mother-in-law introduce an unknown tablet into my champagne flute. I executed a covert switch. The glass she consumed from contained the substance. My colleague has preserved it using non-contact handling. The patient's symptoms align with benzodiazepine class sedation. You'll need a tox screen and a sealed evidence chain. For a heartbeat, the doctor didn't move. Then training took over. "Understood," he said. He gestured to a nurse. "Secure that glass. Use a sterile bag, mark chain custody to security, reference patient record." Sarah stepped forward, producing the wrapped flute. The nurse accepted it, double-bagged, labeled with date, time, initials, the small rituals that turn suspicion into fact. I exhaled once, slow. Chain of custody established. From here, procedure would carry the truth farther than I ever could. Ethan joined us a few minutes later, confusion clouding his features. "Amy, what's going on? You're talking like this is an incident report," I said evenly. "Because it is." His brow creased. "You think she—" No. "No, that's impossible. She's been anxious, sure, but—" "Ethan." I turned to face him, my tone low but firm. "This isn't about anxiety. It's chemistry. The results will speak." He shook his head, stepping back, eyes wide with the reflex of a man protecting the myth of family. "She wouldn't." "You're misreading." I didn't argue. I'd learned long ago that truth doesn't need convincing. It just needs documentation. As they moved Diane into observation, I filed my own report. Not for command this time, but for conscience. Timestamp, statement, witness list, my signature steady at the bottom. When we left the ER in the early hours, the city was silent. The streets glistened from a light rain, neon reflections rippling like signal flares. Sarah slid into the passenger seat beside me, her presence grounding, familiar. "Chain's clean," she said quietly. "No smudges. No contact except me and hospital staff." "Good," I replied. My hands rested still on the wheel. Now we wait for the lab. Behind us, the building's lights burned steady. Somewhere inside, Diane Davis slept under medical supervision, the sedative still running its course. And for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't the one on trial in her eyes. The waiting room at Mount Carmel East was bathed in sterile light, that flat, unblinking white that strips warmth out of everything it touches. The clock on the wall ticked loud enough to mark every minute since we arrived. Ethan sat across from me, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I could tell he wanted to speak, but every possible sentence died somewhere behind his lips. When the attending physician finally returned, clipboard in hand, his expression told me everything before he even opened his mouth. Calm, neutral, and slightly guarded. The face of someone delivering confirmation they wish they didn't have to. "Mrs. Davis's blood work came back," he said, voice low, professional. We found a significant concentration of lorazepam, far beyond a therapeutic dose. This wasn't accidental. Someone administered it deliberately. The word deliberately landed like a gavel. Ethan's head shot up, disbelief etched in every line of his face. That can't be right, he stammered. My mother doesn't even take medication like that. She didn't, I said quietly, not voluntarily. The doctor glanced between us, then back to me. You said you saw her drop something into a glass? I nodded once. My glass. I switched them before the toast. Ethan turned toward me, eyes wide. Amy, you're saying she… I'm not saying anything, I interrupted gently. The evidence will. There's a kind of silence that follows the truth. Not peace, but the heavy stillness of something undeniable. Ethan leaned back, shaking his head. No, this has to be a mix-up. Maybe someone played a prank? Maybe… The doctor raised a hand, cutting him off softly. Mr. Davis, we've cross-referenced the sample. It's not contamination. Whoever ingested that dose did so from a single serving. Based on the timing, the ingestion occurred within the last hour. He left us then, retreating into the bright corridor. His job was done. Facts delivered, paperwork to follow. Gregory arrived moments later, still in his tuxedo, bow tie undone, face flushed with anger and embarrassment. What's happening? He demanded, voice too loud for the room. The nurses said something about poison. That's insane. Ethan tried to explain, stumbling over fragments. The toast, the tablet, the doctor's findings. Gregory's gaze found mine, narrowing. You, he said, his voice dropping to a low growl. You're the one who started this. I didn't move. I'm the one who saw it, I replied evenly. She's your mother-in-law, he snapped. You're supposed to protect family, not drag them through accusations. Family protects each other with truth, I said. Not denial. He scoffed, pacing. Do you have any idea what this will do to her reputation? To ours? Yes, I said simply. That's why she chose a room full of witnesses, so no one would believe it. Ethan stepped between us, his voice shaking. Dad, stop. This isn't helping. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine for something he couldn't name. Amy, please, if you're wrong. I'm not, I said quietly. And you'll see it yourself. The nurse re-entered then, holding a sealed evidence bag. Inside, wrapped in linen, was the champagne flute Sarah had preserved. The label strip bore initials, date, and case number. She handed it to the on-duty security officer, who began the intake form for chain of custody. He looked at me. You're the reporting party? Yes. I'll provide a statement. Copy that. He noted the time, 23:48, and sealed the bag within a second layer. Property will go to Columbus PD for analysis. One more link in the chain. Unbroken. Sarah appeared in the doorway, still in her bridesmaid gown, but now carrying herself like she was back on mission. Everything's documented, ma'am, she said quietly. Photos, timestamps, no contamination. Gregory stared between us, bewildered. What is this? Some kind of operation? You're treating a wedding like a war zone. No, I said. She did. For the first time that night, Ethan met my gaze and didn't look away. His face was pale, his voice small. If you're right, he whispered, then everything I thought I knew about her will change, I finished. That's how truth works. It changes the terrain. The following afternoon, the toxicology report confirmed what we already knew. The substance in Diane's bloodstream matched the residue found in the champagne flute. The dosage was calculated, not random. And in the report's final line, under comments, the analyst had written 3 words that sealed her fate. Intent cannot be excluded. Ethan came to me then, holding the printed report like it was a live grenade. His eyes moved over the lines again and again, searching for some loophole. some way to make it say something else. Finally, he lowered the paper. So, what now? Now, I said. We let the law handle what family wouldn't. Later that night, as rain whispered against the windows of our apartment, a new message appeared on Ethan's phone. It was from Diane. The words were jagged, furious, a reflex of pride still clinging to the wreckage. It was a setup. She switched the glasses. I'll make her pay. Ethan showed me the screen, his hand trembling. That single text was more powerful than any courtroom speech. It wasn't a denial. It was an admission. And a threat. I looked at him calm. Forward that to the hospital and the police. It's the final piece. He hesitated only a second, then hit send. For the first time since the wedding began, there was no noise. No laughter. No pretending. Just the hum of the rain and the quiet truth between us. The kind that no one could twist. 3 days later, the truth moved out of the realm of family whispers and into the language of law. The Columbus Police Department contacted me first, a soft-spoken detective from the Special Investigations Unit. He asked for a time to meet. Not at home, not at the hospital, but at the precinct. Somewhere official, somewhere neutral. Ethan came with me. He didn't argue this time. He just walked beside me in silence, his shoulders slightly hunched, wedding ring glinting under fluorescent light. It wasn't defiance now. It was shame. A man trying to understand how something like this could grow under his roof unnoticed. Inside interview room 3, everything felt smaller. Metal table, 2 chairs, 1 recorder. The detective introduced himself, slid a form across the table, and pressed a small red button. Captain Lawson, he began, you understand this is voluntary. You're not under any investigation. Yes, I said evenly. He nodded once. Then walk me through the sequence. I did, methodically, without flourish. From Diane's approach at the table to the drop of the tablet, the swap, the symptoms, the preservation of evidence. Each detail delivered in order, the same way I'd brief a command post. Every few sentences he interjected with quiet precision. Time of observation? Estimated dosage? Witnesses? When I finished, he clicked his pen closed and leaned back. You're thorough, he said, not as flattery, but as acknowledgement. We'll corroborate everything. He reached into a folder, pulling out 2 documents, a copy of the toxicology report and a transcript of the text message Diane had sent to Ethan. He slid them across the table. This message, he said, tapping it once, constitutes acknowledgement of awareness. It implies knowledge of contamination. That's powerful. Ethan shifted beside me. I didn't look at him. I was reading the form beneath the report, a standard victim statement request. The first box read, Nature of offense. Assault. Administering a harmful substance. I signed it. Not with anger, not with triumph. Just with clarity. From there, the machine took over. The slow, impersonal gears of procedure. Officers executed a quiet warrant, arriving at the Davis residence early one morning. There were no flashing lights, no reporters, no spectacle. Just the sound of gloved hands on polished doorknobs, the low murmur of instructions, and the soft metallic click of handcuffs. When the news reached me, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the system had done its job. Ethan, on the other hand, stood frozen in our kitchen, phone in hand. They actually arrested her, he whispered. His voice carried awe and disbelief, as if truth had somehow betrayed him by being real. She made a choice, I said softly. Now she faces consequence. The preliminary hearing came quickly. Diane arrived flanked by 2 high-priced attorneys, her posture rigid, her expression blank. The courtroom smelled faintly of paper and old wood, sterile, almost reverent. Her defense tried everything: stress, medication error, mistaken identity. They painted her as an anxious mother overwhelmed by a high-profile wedding, driven to a momentary lapse. They called it tragic, regrettable, human. But procedure doesn't bend for sympathy. The prosecution presented the toxicology report first, then the chain of custody logs, each signature lined in order. Sarah, nurse, security, lab tech, officer. Every name a link in a chain that could not be broken. Then came the video stills, the time-stamped photo of the flute, the text message to Ethan, and the sworn statement from Dr. Lewis confirming medical onset consistent with observed ingestion window. Piece by piece, the story assembled itself. Calm, unshakable, factual. When my turn came to testify, I stood straight, uniform posture even in civilian dress. The prosecutor guided me through each step, keeping my voice steady in the record. No adjectives, no opinions, just sequence and observation. Gregory sat behind the defense table, jaw clenched, refusing to look at me. Ethan sat further back. Expression unreadable, hands folded, wedding ring turned inward. The judge asked 2 questions directly. Captain, did you witness the defendant's hand pass over your glass? Yes, Your Honor. Did you initiate the swap? I did, sir, to preserve control of a potentially contaminated source. He nodded once, noting the phrasing. Understood. By the second day, it was clear even the defense saw the inevitable. They requested a plea negotiation, lesser charge, no prison time, probation, treatment, and restitution. The prosecutor offered a narrow path. Plead guilty to attempted administration of a controlled substance and accept monitored counseling. Otherwise, the case would proceed. Diane refused at first. Her pride wouldn't allow it. But the evidence, cold, methodical, and public, left no air for denial. On day 3, she signed. Ethan watched as she whispered with her lawyers, her once flawless composure fracturing at last. He didn't cry. He just sat there, motionless while the judge read the terms. When it ended, the courtroom emptied quickly. No one spoke to me. They didn't have to. The silence carried its own verdict. That night, Ethan sat across from me in the dim light of our apartment. He looked smaller somehow, like a man standing amid the wreckage of a life he thought was safe. I don't know how to fix this, he said quietly. You don't, I answered. You accept it, and you learn. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. You didn't celebrate. There's nothing to celebrate, I said. Justice isn't a victory parade. It's a clean report. Outside, the rain began again, gentle, rhythmic, steady. It tapped against the glass like a slow heartbeat. In that sound, I felt something new. Not triumph, not relief. Just the faint hum of integrity restored. Not every battle ends with applause. Some end with paperwork, signatures, and silence. And sometimes that's enough. When the hearings were over and the ink on the final judgment dried, I found myself standing in a kind of silence that didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath, the kind of quiet that follows controlled detonation. You clear the debris, count the fragments, and only then do you realize what survived and what didn't. Ethan and I didn't talk much in the weeks that followed. Not because of anger, but because there weren't words big enough to fill the gap between what we were and what we'd become. He was trying. I could see that. Trying to understand how a lifetime of blind loyalty could coexist with truth. How the woman who'd tucked him into bed as a child could commit a crime against the woman he chose as an adult. That's not a concept you process overnight. I gave him space. Not as punishment, but as respect. Some battles can't be fought for another person. They have to find their footing, rebuild their compass, and decide which direction they want to march. In the meantime, I returned to the one constant that never failed me. Routine. Early runs before sunrise, strength circuits in the garage, filing reports for work. It wasn't escapism. It was rhythm. Soldiers heal through rhythm. Through motion. Because standing still means replaying every scene. Every now and then, Sarah would drop by unannounced, bringing 2 coffees and a look that said she already knew what kind of day I was having. We didn't always talk about it. Sometimes we just sat in the kitchen, letting the steam rise between us, breathing in silence that felt like understanding. "Still thinking about her?" she asked one morning. "Not her," I said. "What she represents." Sarah nodded. "Takes time. The mission's over, but the terrain's still shifting." She was right. The battlefield wasn't physical anymore. It was emotional terrain, the slow remapping of what family means when the old map is burned. About a month later, Ethan knocked on the door of my home office. His voice was quiet when he spoke. "Amy, can we talk?" He stood there holding an envelope. It was from his father, a final letter. The words inside were sharp, written in the language of wounded pride and denial. He blamed me for everything. For exposing Diane, for ruining their name, for weaponizing the uniform. He ended with one line that read, "You may wear medals, but you'll never understand family." I folded the letter once and set it aside. "You don't have to defend me," I said. "I'm not," Ethan replied, voice breaking slightly. "I'm done defending them." He sat down across from me, eyes red-rimmed but steady. "You were right. I didn't have your 6. I let my old loyalties cloud my judgment. That ends today." I didn't speak. I just reached across the table and took his hand. It wasn't forgiveness yet. It was recognition. The kind soldiers share after a mission goes wrong, but they both make it back alive. The next morning, Ethan started therapy through a veterans family program. He said he needed to understand his upbringing the way I understood operational risk, not as guilt, but as analysis. Watching him take that first step reminded me of something an old commander once told me. "We can't control where we came from, Captain, but we can damn sure control the standard we leave behind." That became our North Star. We sold the house. The city had become a field of memory, every street corner carrying a shadow of that night. We relocated west, Denver, where mountains rise like sentinels against the horizon. Out there, the air felt different. Clean. Honest. We rebuilt life slowly, deliberately. No rush. Just trust, piece by piece. Ethan opened a small architectural practice, designing homes meant to breathe with the land instead of fight it. I transitioned into veteran advocacy, guiding soldiers who felt lost in civilian life, teaching them that honor doesn't end when the uniform comes off. Sometimes in those counseling sessions, I'd hear echoes of my own story. People betrayed by those they trusted most, forced to choose truth over comfort. I never shared my details, but I'd tell them this. Loyalty without integrity isn't loyalty. It's submission. Years later, standing on our back porch as the sun dipped behind the Rockies, I found myself watching our daughter. Small, fearless, chasing fireflies with a mason jar. Her laughter carried through the air, sharp and bright. Ethan stepped beside me, arm brushing mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said quietly, "You know, I used to think strength was about standing tall no matter what. But you showed me it's about standing true, even if you stand alone." I smiled faintly. No one stands alone forever, not if they stand for the right thing. He nodded, eyes still on our daughter. "She's going to know that." "She already does," I said. And in that moment, with the evening breeze lifting the last light off the peaks, I realized something simple. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about clarity, the kind forged only when illusion burns away, and what's left is real. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It doesn't kick down doors or shout triumph from the rooftops. Sometimes it just stands quietly, like a soldier at ease, waiting for dawn. And when dawn comes, you don't celebrate. You breathe. You rebuild. You begin again. Have you ever watched someone underestimate quiet strength until truth revealed everything? If you have, share this story with them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. We post new stories every day about protocol, respect, and the quiet power of discipline. Because here, at Soldier Revenge, silence isn't weakness. It's warning.